Have you ever imagined surviving alone in the middle of the ocean? No land, no house, no food, and no rescue boat nearby. Now imagine surviving there for more than one entire year alone. This sounds impossible, but one fisherman lived through this incredible experience. His name was José Salvador Alvarenga, and his story shocked the entire world. He survived 438 days drifting across the Pacific Ocean inside a small fishing boat. During that time, he faced hunger, storms, loneliness, thirst, and terrifying uncertainty. He had no idea whether he would ever see land again. Every morning brought another difficult question about his chances for survival. But his incredible journey began during one ordinary fishing trip. José Salvador Alvarenga was born in El Salvador during the 1970s. He later moved to Mexico and worked as a fisherman near the Pacific coast. Fishing became his main way earning money and supporting his family. José knew the ocean well because he spent many years working on fishing boats. He understood weather patterns, ocean currents, fish behavior, and basic fishing techniques. His experience helped him survive conditions that would destroy many inexperienced sailors. However, no amount of experience could fully prepare him for what happened next. In November 2012, José planned a short fishing trip near Mexico. He expected returning home after only several days at sea. His fishing partner was a young man named Ezequiel Cordoba. The two fishermen prepared their small boat and fishing equipment together. Neither man knew this ordinary journey would become one of history's longest survival stories. Then one terrible storm changed their entire future forever. On November 17, 2012, José and Ezequiel left the Mexican coast. They traveled inside a small fiberglass fishing boat without a motor cabin. The boat measured only about 7 meters long and offered little protection. It had no roof, providing complete protection from the dangerous ocean weather. The fishermen planned catching fish and returning home after several days together. At first, the journey seemed normal and nothing appeared seriously dangerous. They worked during the day and watched the ocean carefully around their boat. Then a powerful storm began developing across the Pacific Ocean. The weather quickly became much worse than the fishermen originally expected. Strong winds began pushing huge waves against their small fishing boat. The ocean became dangerous as the storm continued growing stronger around them. Then the fishermen received a terrifying warning from the mainland. José's employer contacted him through a radio communication during the dangerous weather. The message warned him about the approaching storm and dangerous ocean conditions. José understood continuing the fishing trip could become extremely dangerous for both men. He decided returning toward the coast offered their best chance for survival. However, the weather became too powerful before they could reach safety. The storm destroyed their engine and damaged important equipment on their boat. Their communication equipment eventually stopped working during the violent storm. The fishermen were now completely unable calling anyone for immediate help. Their small boat drifted helplessly through the enormous Pacific Ocean. They had limited food, very little water, and no working engine. The short fishing trip had suddenly become a terrifying fight for survival. José and Ezekiel tried controlling the boat using the remaining equipment. They attempted repairing important parts while waves continued attacking the boat. However, the storm destroyed their fishing equipment and damaged their ability fishing. Eventually, the boat drifted without power across the open Pacific Ocean. The fishermen watched the Mexican coastline disappear completely behind the storm. They had no idea how far the ocean currents would eventually carry them. Their families expected them returning home after the short fishing trip. Nobody knew the two fishermen were now facing an unimaginable disaster at sea. Search teams eventually began looking for the missing fishermen after they disappeared. Aircraft and boats searched areas near the Mexican coastline for several days. However, rescuers could not find the small boat anywhere across the ocean. The search eventually stopped because officials believed survival became extremely unlikely. José and Ezekiel were now completely alone on the Pacific Ocean. Their food supplies began disappearing quickly during the first difficult days. Their drinking water also became increasingly limited as the journey continued. The ocean surrounded them in every direction without offering any safe drinking water. The fishermen understood their situation could become fatal very quickly. They needed finding food, water, and shelter before their remaining supplies disappeared completely. José knew the ocean contained fish, but catching them required careful planning. He also knew rainwater could provide essential drinking water during desperate conditions. The survival challenge had only just begun because their journey would last far longer. Neither fisherman could imagine surviving 438 days across the open Pacific Ocean. The storm eventually moved away from the small fishing boat. However, the fishermen discovered their situation had become extremely dangerous. Their engine no longer worked, and their radio could not communicate. The boat drifted wherever powerful ocean currents carried it across the Pacific. José and Ezekiel had no control over their direction or final destination. They could only wait, fish, and hope someone eventually found them. But their biggest problem became finding enough fresh water to survive. The fishermen had only limited drinking water inside their small boat. They understood those supplies could disappear during the following difficult weeks. The Pacific Ocean surrounded them, but seawater could not safely satisfy thirst. Drinking seawater would make their bodies lose even more water through dehydration. They needed discovering another source of fresh water before their supplies disappeared. Fortunately, the ocean sometimes brought heavy rain during tropical storms. José collected rainwater inside containers whenever clouds appeared above the boat. Rain became one of the most important parts of their survival strategy. Every drop could make the difference between life and death at sea. Then the fishermen faced another terrible problem involving food and hunger. Their original food supplies quickly became smaller during the long journey. They had expected spending only several days fishing near the Mexican coast. Nobody had prepared enough food for surviving hundreds of days at sea. The fishermen began catching fish using whatever equipment remained inside the boat. They ate raw fish because cooking became extremely difficult without proper fuel. They also caught turtles and other animals when opportunities appeared near the boat. The ocean provided food, but finding enough food remained difficult every single day. Some days they caught fish, while other days they caught nothing. Hunger became a constant part of their difficult existence on the ocean. Then the two fishermen faced something even worse than hunger itself. José and Ezekiel began experiencing intense psychological stress during their endless journey. They could see only ocean water in every direction around their boat. There were no houses, trees, roads, or people anywhere nearby. Every day looked almost exactly like the previous day before it. The enormous ocean created a feeling of complete isolation and endless loneliness. The fishermen did not know whether rescuers continued searching for them. They also had no idea where the ocean currents were carrying them. The boat could travel hundreds of kilometers without either man controlling its direction. Their families probably believed they had died during the terrible storm. This thought made their survival journey even more emotionally difficult for both men. But José continued believing survival remained possible despite the terrible circumstances. He understood experience could help him make better decisions during difficult moments. He had spent many years fishing and understood the ocean's dangerous behavior. He knew fish could provide food when traditional supplies became completely unavailable. He understood clouds could bring rainwater during certain weather conditions. He also understood remaining calm could help him think clearly during emergencies. José tried focusing upon immediate problems instead of imagining future disasters. He needed finding food today and collecting water whenever rain arrived. This simple approach helped him continue surviving during the following difficult months. Then an unexpected event changed the relationship between the two fishermen forever. Ezekiel became increasingly sick during their long journey across the Pacific. His body struggled with hunger, dehydration, stress, and the difficult ocean conditions. The fishermen continued attempting finding food and water together during every difficult day. However, Ezekiel's health eventually became much worse during the journey. José watched his fishing partner becoming weaker despite their survival efforts together. The situation created enormous emotional pressure inside their small drifting boat. José tried helping Ezekiel while continuing searching for food and drinking water. But the journey became increasingly difficult for both fishermen during every passing week. Eventually, José faced the most painful moment of his entire journey. Ezekiel became too weak continuing the journey across the open ocean. He eventually died during the long journey after many difficult months at sea. José was now completely alone inside the small fishing boat. He had lost his only companion in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The emotional pain became almost impossible for him to understand or accept. He had no other person available for conversation, comfort, or assistance. The endless ocean surrounded him while his loneliness became complete. José now needed surviving not only physically but also emotionally alone. The 438-day journey had become a one-person fight for survival. José continued fishing because food remained essential for his survival. He collected rainwater whenever storms and clouds passed over the boat. He protected his limited supplies because wasting anything could become dangerous. He continued drifting across the Pacific without knowing his final destination. Weeks became months, and months slowly became an entire year. The boat continued traveling thousands of kilometers away from Mexico. José's body became weaker, but his determination remained surprisingly strong. He survived through patience, experience, and a constant desire continuing forward. But the most incredible part of his story was still waiting ahead. José Alvarenga had now spent many months alone across the Pacific Ocean. The small fishing boat continued drifting farther from the Mexican coastline. He had no engine, no radio, and no clear direction home. The ocean currents carried him across thousands of kilometers during the endless journey. Every day brought the same difficult challenges involving food, water, and loneliness. Still, José continued surviving through fishing and collecting rainwater whenever possible. He learned using the ocean around him instead of fighting against nature. Fish became his main source of food during the incredibly long journey. Rain became his most important source of fresh drinking water during survival. The ocean itself became both his greatest danger and greatest source of survival. But after many months, José began losing hope of ever seeing land. He had no way knowing how long his journey would continue. His body became weaker because life at sea demanded enormous physical strength. His skin suffered from constant sunlight, salt water, and difficult weather conditions. His clothing became damaged after months exposed to the harsh ocean environment. His small boat also became increasingly damaged during the long journey. Every storm created another serious threat to his survival and fragile boat. José had already survived conditions that would kill many other people. However, the endless uncertainty remained one of his greatest psychological challenges. He could not know whether land existed anywhere near his drifting boat. Then, After 438 days at sea, something extraordinary finally appeared. On January 30, 2014, José saw something completely different on the horizon. For more than 1 year, he had seen mostly endless ocean water. Now, he suddenly saw land appearing in the distance before him. At first, he could hardly believe his eyes after so many months. The land belonged to the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean. José's small boat had traveled thousands of kilometers from the Mexican coastline. He had crossed an enormous part of the Pacific Ocean without an engine. The distance and survival journey seemed almost impossible for ordinary people understanding. José had finally reached land after 438 days of drifting. His boat eventually reached a small island called Ebon Atoll. José climbed onto the beach after spending more than 1 year at sea. He was extremely weak, exhausted, and physically changed by the journey. However, he was alive after surviving one of history's longest ocean journeys. Local island residents discovered the strange man who had arrived on their island. José could barely communicate because he spoke Spanish and little English. The islanders immediately gave him food, water, and medical assistance. They realized this exhausted fisherman had experienced something incredibly unusual at sea. José eventually explained that he had drifted from Mexico for 438 days. Many people initially struggled believing such an extraordinary survival story. Soon, the entire world began asking one important question. How could one man survive 438 days inside such a small fishing boat? Scientists, journalists, and survival experts carefully examined José's incredible story. Some people questioned certain details because the journey seemed almost impossible. However, researchers confirmed the general route was possible through Pacific Ocean currents. The boat could drift enormous distances through powerful natural ocean movements. José's knowledge about fishing helped him find food during the long journey. His ability collecting rainwater helped him survive without regular drinking supplies. His experience also helped him understand dangerous ocean conditions more effectively. The combination of knowledge, luck, and determination helped keep him alive. His survival story soon became one of the most famous ocean stories ever told. José returned to El Salvador after receiving medical treatment and international attention. He reunited with family members who had believed he died years earlier. The emotional reunion became an important moment after his incredible survival journey. His story appeared in newspapers, television programs, documentaries, and books worldwide. People became fascinated by the fisherman who survived more than 1 year alone. His journey demonstrated the incredible strength of the human survival instinct. However, José's story also created difficult questions about memory and trauma. He had survived an experience that few people could ever truly understand. The ocean had taken his companion, but eventually returned José to civilization. Today, his story remains one of history's most extraordinary survival experiences. José Alvarenga survived 438 days drifting across the Pacific Ocean alone. He faced storms, hunger, dehydration, loneliness, and complete uncertainty every single day. He survived because he found food and collected rainwater whenever possible. He also possessed experience helping him understand the dangerous ocean environment around him. But survival required more than knowledge or luck during that incredible journey. It required continuing even when rescue seemed completely impossible for many months. It required waking up each morning and solving another difficult survival problem. It required believing tomorrow might bring something better than today. After 438 days, tomorrow finally brought land and human civilization again. José's incredible story proves survival can continue long after hope seems gone. One fisherman left Mexico expecting a short fishing trip near the coast. He eventually crossed the Pacific Ocean inside a small drifting boat alone. He survived 438 days before finally reaching a remote Pacific island. His story became a powerful example of human endurance and determination. The ocean tried taking everything from him during his impossible journey. But José Alvarenga continued surviving until land finally appeared on the horizon. Sometimes the greatest survival story begins when rescue seems completely impossible.